Ever wonder what gives India's top federal investigative agency its teeth? Well, the answer isn't some modern law. It's a blueprint that goes all the way back to 1946. Today, we're going to break down the Delhi Special Police Establishment Act, the legal DNA of the CBI, to really understand where its power comes from and, just as importantly, where it stops.
Think about it for a second. When a massive crime happens that crosses state lines or maybe even reaches into the highest levels of government, who steps in? Who actually has the authority to investigate? The answer is buried right inside the law we're exploring today, the Delhi Special Police Establishment Act.
So, here's our game plan. We're going to look at 5 key pieces of this puzzle. We'll start with what this law even created in the first place, then what crimes it covers, how its leaders are chosen, its biggest limitations, and finally, why this nearly 80-year-old act is still so incredibly relevant today.
Okay, so let's jump right in at the very beginning. What exactly did this law create? What was this special police force supposed to do?
Here's the core of it. Section 2 of the Act brought something called the Delhi Special Police Establishment, or DSPE, into existence. Now, its original job was pretty specific, to investigate certain crimes within India's union territories, operating directly under the central government.
And here's the connection that makes it all click. The DSPE isn't just some dusty historical name. It is the formal legal entity that you and I know today as the CBI. So this 1946 Act, it's the very foundation that the Central Bureau of Investigation is built on. It's where it gets its power to investigate.
All right, so we've got the special force. But what can it actually look into? Does it have, a blank check to investigate any crime it wants? Well, not exactly. The answer is all about how its scope gets defined.
And the answer is a definite no. It's not a free-for-all. See, according to Section 3, the central government has to step in and specifically say, okay, DSPE, you are now empowered to investigate these types of crimes. They do it through a formal notice. This makes sure the agency stays focused on cases that are considered nationally important.
For an agency this powerful, who's in charge is, well, it's everything, right? And the Act lays out a really specific and, frankly, fascinating process for how the top boss, the director, is not only chosen, but also protected from political pressure.
Now, this is where it gets really interesting. Section 4A makes it clear that the director isn't just picked by one person. Instead, you get this high-powered committee with 3 key people: the Prime Minister, the Leader of the Opposition, and the Chief Justice of India. Think about that lineup. It's specifically designed to create balance, so no single part of the government gets total control over the appointment. And to add another layer of protection, Section 4B gives the director a guaranteed minimum term of 2 years. Now, why is that so important? It means they can't just be shuffled out or transferred if an investigation starts getting, let's say, politically uncomfortable. It gives them a real shield of independence. And that committee, they don't just pick a name out of a hat. Section 4A, subsection 3, gives them a very clear checklist. They've got to look for seniority, rock-solid integrity, and crucially, a lot of experience in anti-corruption cases. And the person has to be a high-ranking officer from the Indian Police Service. This whole process is designed to make sure the person in charge is not just qualified, but also totally credible. Okay, let's get into what is probably the most debated part of this entire act. How does a federal agency work in a country where policing is mostly a state issue? This right here, this is where the real push and pull is. This breaks it down perfectly. In union territories, which are run by the central government, the agency's power is automatic. No problem. But, and this is the absolute key point, if they want to operate inside a state, Section 6 throws in a huge condition. They need the consent of that state's government.
And there it is, straight from the horse's mouth. The actual text of Section 6 is crystal clear. Without a state's permission, the DSPE simply cannot use its police powers there. This one clause, this single sentence, is the bedrock of the federal balance in this act, and it's the reason for so much legal and political debate even today.
So, we've just walked through the nuts and bolts of a law written before India was even independent. Let's pull it all together and talk about why understanding this old piece of paper is so essential for understanding India today.
So what are the big takeaways here? First, this act is the legal engine of the CBI. Simple as that. Second, it creates this really unique appointment process to try and keep the director independent. And third, and this is the big one, it sets up this delicate, often messy balancing act between the central government's power and the state's authority.
And it's that last point, the whole issue of state consent, that keeps this 80-year-old law in the headlines.